Welcome to Note Doctors. My name is Paul.
My name is Jenn.
My name is Ben.
And we are your hosts. We are all university music theory instructors who are passionate about music theory and music theory instruction. In this podcast, we will be talking about all things theory with some of the best music theory teachers in the country. If you want to know more about music theory and the most effective and innovative ways to teach it, this is the podcast for you. Hello, Note Doctors listeners. So today our very special guest is David Portillo. It's been a while since we've had an episode, but we've been kind of busy with school and life and all sorts of things. But we are continuing on with our series on, what do music majors need in their music theory classroom. And today we're kind of talking with David because he is a professional opera singer. So thinking about, what are our students who are wanting to go into those professional ranks, what are they going to be needing to do, and talking with him. And he has such great advice and ideas on what he's been able to use in his own career from theory and aural skills. So Jenn, tell us a little bit more about David.
Absolutely. So David is an American tenor. He was born and raised in San Antonio, Texas, and thought he was going to be a music educator, but ended up going into vocal performance. And now he has sung all over the world, including, Teatro Real in Madrid. He's done Opera Frankfurt. He's done Chicago Lyric Opera and even the Metropolitan Opera in New York City. So the first thing you should do is go listen to him sing on his website, which he gives at the end of this discussion. But David and I are longtime friends, and it was really, really fun to talk to him. He has some great tips for how music theory can be helpful for an active performing musician.
I'm always learning new music. I'm constantly learning. And whether or not I'm sitting there analyzing a fugue, I'm still using music theory. I'm still using my education degree. I'm still using the things that the tools that I had to learn back then. And preparation, man, that's the big part of learning how to be a performer.
So today our very special guest is David Portillo, a legitimate opera singer. He's the real deal. All right. And we're so excited to talk with you, David, about probably your second favorite thing, which is music theory. But
it's on some list as second. Yeah.
Right. And so we like to start off by asking our guests just a little bit about their background and kind of how they got into music. Where did you get your start? And, is being claimed as having a warm, sexy tenor in the Dallas Opera brochure.
Warm, sexy tenor? Is that what it says?
That's what it is. I just got, so people who are listening, I just got the Dallas Opera brochure for their next season. And I was flipping through and I'm like, I recognize that face. And David Portillo right there, Cosi fan tutti. All right. And that's how they describe you. You have been praised for a warm, sexy tenor. So you've reached pinnacle
PG-13 opera realness.
Yeah, it looks like it's a period costume, so I guess it will be PG-13. Nothing too progressive. We'll see. But exactly. Tell us a little bit about how you got to where you're at now.
I always sang growing up. I was in choir. In every choir I had to be in. It was available. I was in it. My mom was a music teacher, and she taught choral music, and she taught piano, and she taught voice and everything possible at the Hispanic Baptist Theological Seminary in San Antonio, Texas, where I grew up. And so I just kept singing in choir, went to choir in school. And then when I was finished, I thought, well, I'm going to become the best choral director ever. And I wanted to be the next Robert Shaw. And then I got to my undergrad and I realized that I wasn't patient enough for that. And I had a lot of solos. So I was like, oh, let me go try this opera degree, right? Let me try a vocal performance degree at the University of North Texas, where I met Jenn Weaver. And so I went to North Texas for 2 years and did a performance degree in opera. And that's where I did a few roles and really decided that I fell in love with the repertoire, with the texts, with the stories, with being on stage, which is another really fun thing about the job. And then I started doing all of the young artist program kind of tracks. So the next year I kind of was shuffling around doing young artist programs in different places, including El Paso Opera, Cincinnati Opera, Tulsa Opera. And then I went to the Young Artist program at Florida Grand Opera. And for 3 years, I was at the kind of prestigious, I say kind of prestigious, it is very prestigious, but I hate to say that I'm prestigious. I was in the opera center at the Ryan Opera Center at the Lyric Opera of Chicago for 3 years, which was a really great experience right before going freelance. And by that time I had turned 30 years old. So it was time to make a decent living and support myself. And I was really lucky just to go straight from school into performing, but that is not everybody's path. And so I had a really a great way to start into the opera world. I also sing concerts. I also sing recital. And really, I've been doing that for ever since school, which I'm so privileged to be able to say that was my track and that I get to do this for a living. Yeah. And so I sing in all sorts of opera houses nowadays. COVID kind of threw a wrench in a lot of things, and but also really kind of made things stand out to be really great about this job. You know, I just came back from doing Britain's A Midsummer Night's Dream in Opera Lille in France, in the north of France. And right now I'm in Cleveland, I'm a resident artist as a part of the Cleveland Institute of Music Festival, Art Song Festival that goes on for a week every late spring into summer. And it's a magical kind of week-long place where you work with a team of pianist and singer, and we talk about art song. And I'm giving a recital with a collaborator, pianist friend of mine, Craig Terry, incredible pianist. And we're doing classes on Saturday. I'm very lucky to have these kind of balanced opportunities, a little opera, a little recital, a little concerts. And that's somehow I've managed to squeeze together a job. That's my track.
No, that's great. And it's so funny. So many of the people that we talk to, music ed is the thing that they're interested in first. It's like, that's what they want to do. Either it's a teacher, or oftentimes it is a family member, a parent. My parents were musicians. That's what's kind of what gets us in there. And that's like as far as we see our career in music as being this teacher role, because that's what we encounter. But then it's not till we get to college, right, that we see, there's all these other opportunities right out there beyond just teaching. Mm-hmm.
I'm really lucky that I did grow up in a house where I watched my mom prepare lessons, lessons for piano lessons and voice lessons, and then she would prepare choral rehearsals, and then I got to go to those rehearsals and really watch her work. And then when I went to school, it was such a wonderful, natural thing for me to want to be in a choir, which is very different for a little boy in San Antonio, Texas, who is, 12 years old. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to sing in the choir because I love to sight read. I love to use solfege. I love to sing in front of people. And then really, as I continued to get older, I realized that it takes a very special person. It takes a very special personality to be in the classroom and really have that much, like I said, patience. There's a lot of creativity that you have to go through. There's so many different changes. And I have to say, I loved my student teaching, but I also realized that part of the student teaching that I liked was being quote unquote on and being performative and being like trying to make sure that people were always looking at me and I had the attention and I had that I had this plan, like that I was curating an experience. And I also realized that performance did that in a much more natural way. So, and I didn't have to like discipline and all the other things that come along with being a teacher. So I'm very lucky that I did grow up around music teachers because it was invaluable to me as a performer, because I learned how to be a performer when I was just, watching my mom,
That's amazing. I think Ben and I had similar experiences of, well, I know I did, of going to student teaching and being like, oh boy, I don't know that this is what I want to do. And I ended up still in the classroom, but just at a different age level and not in front of an ensemble, teaching, just music theory. So student teaching, I learned a lot of those same things, that what's fun about it is the people, the students themselves, and the kind of the being in front of someone, curating an experience, like you said, but that a lot of the other work was not the right fit for me.
Right.
The patience. And the, being willing to have many 5-year-olds hanging on you on the regular.
Yes.
That was like, oh, this is not great. College freshmen, they don't do that. So that works.
Right.
For me. Exactly.
You don't have to tell college freshmen how to, line up in a line and sit down on a red piece of tape on the floor. Right.
No.
But
in
somehow
fact, they're never in a line. Like, unless they're getting like lunch or something, like they're just
literally herding cats.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So can you tell us?
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Ben.
No, I was going to say, I don't regret my music ed degree, not even a single second of it. But I definitely knew in student teaching that it wasn't something I wanted to do long term. I think it kind of hits a lot of us, where some people in my class would come back, oh my gosh, I miss my students so much from 6th grade violin. And I was thinking to myself, it was a nice violin lesson, but it's really not my cup of tea kind of thing. And I wanted to kind of do more on the academic side, and theory definitely was the spot for me. But I can see that, and you learn things conceptually about teaching. You learn things about how, all the instruments, how the voice is. Taking voice class for me was an eye-opening experience. You'd be surprised how much I didn't know about the voice. And when you're teaching theory lectures, you're using your voice a lot. You're singing a lot of things for them. In a certain way, theory majors should take a voice class. You could argue for that. So, but that was a class that I use a lot. I thought walking into it, oh, geez, I'm just going to be a band teacher. Why am I even in this voice class? I kind of blew it off in undergrad. But now I'm thinking, wow, that was so stupid to think. But I use stuff from my music ed degree every single day, even though I'm not, doing K-12 instrumental like my certification would tell you,
I think the fun thing yesterday, I was in a class of singers and pianists, and it's a duo team, and there was a Q&A sort of situation. And basically, most of the questions were, how do you make a living doing this? And I feel like every answer always ended up just always be learning. Like, you're always going to learn. And I think a lot what I was doing when I was in my theory class was like, once I get through this test, or once I turn this thing in, I'm done with this. And basically I'm realizing I have to, I'm always learning new music. I'm constantly learning. And whether or not I'm sitting there analyzing a fugue, I'm still using music theory. I'm still using my education degree. I'm still using the things that the tools that I had to learn back then. And preparation, man, that's the big part of learning how to be a performer,
Well, that's a good segue to ask you, what was your music theory experience like in college?
Well, like I said, I just waited till I had to turn everything in and I was done. I'm just kidding. There was a lot of that. There was a lot of catch up, growing up, I grew up in the First Baptist Church of San Antonio, and the guy who was my music theory teacher for 3 of those years was the dad of one of my friends who I grew up with, and he was a great trumpet player at a high school nearby. And Dr. Valentine was just somebody I knew. And then I went to UTSA, UT San Antonio, for my undergrad, and basically Dr. Valentine, my friend's dad, was my theory teacher. So then I was like, oh, this will be fine, No, I definitely had to learn a lot of stuff. I had to study. I had to actually do the assignments. And he was very, very kind to me. And I think as a singer, aural skills was something that I always just went to because I was like, oh yeah, I'm good at sight reading. I think I can do that. I have the immediate instrument that just goes like, this is what it is, I realized I wasn't that good at sight reading. There are some people who just immediately look at a full score and are like, this is what it sounds like in their head. And they know, and I'm not that. But I definitely, I feel like the skill sets that people have when they're able to just look at a score and say, this is exactly what this should sound like before hearing anything. I'm in awe of that. I'm in awe of pianists who can take this machine with these 88 things and then like just make magic with it. And then I'm like, well, let me sing this line on top. It seems like it's a weird, we do this every day, but it seems like it's a mysterious sort of activity that when we make music together on these instruments that I don't know how to play, and I would never even start to play anything besides a piano. But like, I think there's what's cool about music theory is that people who do it well are kind of breaking down that magic and really being like, this is really like what's going on when you're looking at a piece of music. I don't think I'm the greatest musician ever, but I think that I've learned a lot of music, a lot of different styles, a lot of different languages. And I think I can incorporate, that learning that I had in theory, on the stage, on an operatic stage and in concert.
Yeah, I agree with every single thing you said there. And I will tag on that this semester, some of my students that we did final projects where they wrote character themes, and some of them chose only to write for C instruments because they were so afraid of transposing anything and getting out of their comfort zone by even 1 inch, I think next semester I'm going to require them to get out of their comfort zone and say, not just something that you don't play, but like, if you are a flute player and you write for oboe, okay, that's nice. But then how about a flute player and writing for clarinet in B flat and being able to understand, like you said, being able to actually break down that magic and taking the time in theory class with a mentor right there to say, hey, you know what? Your clarinet part is actually 1 step off. You need to move that, to the correct line. Such a valuable experience, breaking it down and kind of building that into the class, into the theory class is huge. I love doing stuff like that.
Have you all, I'm sorry. So my question for you all is, am I the first singer who's been on here?
No, we actually had Jennifer Youngs, who
yes, okay.
Actually this is the last episode. So we've had like 2 singers in a row. And
amazing,
so
nice.
amazing, yeah. Right. And and we've had a number of folks who have choir backgrounds, and kind of have some experience singing, but they're not, making a living with their voice and like, people listening to their voice,
right.
There's this teaching element and things like that.
I think some of the most like brilliant minded singers are the ones who are doing ensemble and chamber music, because some of that stuff is just so there's a wonderful beauty in the tedium, it's difficult to do. But as an opera singer, a lot of times we're like, how do I get the most amount of sound? I don't know what's happening necessarily in the pit, but I know that it sounds kind of like this, and I'm going to scream over it basically. And there's a lot when you get to the final result of opera that is so fulfilling, when you know exactly what's happening in the pit, and that, what, this oboe is going to play on 1, I'm going to come in on 3, and we're going to be together. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times you don't get that luxury, whether or not it's a fast rehearsal period, whether or not you only have 1 sitz probe. A sitz probe is the rehearsal before the opera, where you just rehearse with the voices and the orchestra, and you're not doing any of the staging or anything. And so it's kind of it's an amazing experience when you get to have that, like, oh, this is what I'm hearing and what I can understand from this piano vocal score that I've been looking at only, and then it's really nice also when a full score and like, oh, in this Rossini thing, I know that the horns finally come in here, and then I'm going to hear, 2 more measures of strings, and then I come in. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm
it's
trying
score
to talk
study.
about music theory.
No,
Score study. There you go.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's right there. It's being able to look at a full score and knowing what those instruments are, knowing what they sound like. Where do you fit in with that texture? And then it's like, the aural skills piece, singing in tune. I mean, that's obvious, but that's how you tell the really good singers, the ones that sing in tune, right?
Yep. I mean, it's funny. It doesn't come just like a normal thing. Yeah. Oh, everybody sings in tune here. Well,
Have you heard our sight singing exams? We've all had sight singing exams in the past 2 weeks, and we've heard a lot of out of tune singing. But you've got to have every pitch right on, and you've got to tune with all these different instruments. It's not just with the piano, but it's like with an oboe, and then maybe it might be with the strings a measure later and things like that.
Mm-hmm. I was really lucky to perform at the Met. Thomas Oddis's newest opera, The Exterminating Angel. Thomas Oddis is known for, he wrote The Tempest probably about 10 years ago, and he has Powder Her Face is another one from even before that. Really amazing new music, very, I don't want to say English. Yeah, it's very English in style as far as that's concerned. But this score, there was a part for an owned instrument, and there was all sorts of only percussion happening, and we just had to choose a note and go sort of situation. But there was a lot of here's my note 2 pages earlier. I'm going to hold this in my head, and maybe I'm going to hum it a few times in the middle of this phrase that's happening, and then I'm just going to come in. There's definitely a wonderful sort of relief when you don't have to do that after a while, and that performance practice of knowing okay, this is all going to come together because I've realized what's happening in the orchestra with me. Then there's a big relief. It feels really good that when it sounds right,
Isn't Exterminating Angel the one that has the highest note ever sung in an opera or something like that? I feel like there was a big news story about it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a A flat. Oh my gosh, you're going to ask me the numbers.
No, it's okay. There are different systems
whatever
anyway.
That
but I think it's an
A
flat 6. To those of you who are thinking of the numbers, I think it was an A flat 6. Yeah.
Yes,
that's insanely high.
It's crazy high, and it's not something easy for people to do, and not everybody can do it. But Audrey Luna is the name of the soprano, and she's amazing, and she did it, and it was such an incredible show. It was one of those, the story is super weird, and the music went right along with that. It was a great experience, very, very rewarding, and I'm really happy to have been a part of it. And he's writing some amazing operas, and hopefully there will be a few more in his lifetime. I also just this last summer did John Corliano's The Lord of Cries, which is a mixture of the Dracula story with an old Greek play, and so it was a wonderful kind of melange of styles and of language and of especially vocalism happening was really, really cool. And I had to do a few screams that I had to start on a sung pitch, and then I had to end at a yell, and then I had to just know where this certain B flat was, and all of these wonderful little tricky things vocally that I got to do, that I think sometimes when you watch an opera, you're taking in so much, you're seeing and hearing things, and you don't realize how many times I had to practice a scream and then sing a B flat.
I think I've actually heard that in sight singing exams before.
Yeah. I bet you have.
There's more crying, screaming and crying
than the crying. Right,
than the crying. Now, did your theory experience expose you much to 20th and 21st century music? That's one of the common themes is how much we focus on, common practice music and theory and trying to branch out and get into more contemporary things. In your own theory kind of education, was it primarily focused on kind of common practice music? Did you get much into kind of 20th century or maybe even like early music, right? Stuff that you're, doing a lot now, especially with your the contemporary opera.
I definitely didn't sit there and decide to learn about theory of 21st and 20th century music. I really was just doing the assignments. But I definitely quickly realized that is something that I needed a lot more experience with. And I'm very happy that I was able to work on some of the projects that I had to work on and learn through them. Yeah, I mean, like it's kind of a skill set again that I think more choral musicians get because they are singing more contemporary music that requires like a very finite amount of time of rehearsal, and then you have to be doing all the ensemble rehearsal. That's very difficult. Meanwhile, like I can sit in a practice room by myself and just clunk out notes over and over and over again, and I can get kind of like a relative pitch idea of some things to do, and I have words and staging to really kind of help me out also. The last two contemporary things the composer is also there. So that also helps in the experience, is that you can actually speak to people who have written the music, and you can ask for help. You can ask for, I don't think I asked for any changes, but if that was necessary, I think that's actually something that should be, that should be normalized. Is composers saying, yeah, okay, we can change a few things here if it's either not comfortable vocally or it's something that's just really, really difficult to learn or memorize or, whatever it is.
Well, it sounds like you've used quite a bit from your music theory experiences, but we have to probe a little bit further and ask you what you're not really using, or what do you think that here we are in our core teaching or even our graduate theory teaching, what is it that we could skip, or that you found yourself looking back and thinking, you know what, if I would have skipped the unit on X, right, I would have been okay still.
Mm-hmm. I mean, being a singer, I just really wish I had so much more time on the keyboard, and I definitely passed the proficiency and I wasn't bad, but I really wish that somebody said, you're going to really want to have, whether you're in the classroom, whether you are going to be a performer. I mean, every chamber group should also be able to like have somebody who just like, oh yeah, here's what's missing, and we can play this all together. But I mean, I think the piano is such a skill I really wish I had for myself and for my colleagues. I wish that was something I could do a lot better. It was a few years ago that Dr. Valentine taught my theory class, but I mean, like a lot of the I don't regret any of it. That's for sure. I really am glad that I had those experiences, but some of the things I wish I could apply like directly to, okay, this chord is what I'm going to hear. So I do write down, like, if there's difficulty to learn things, I do write down chords. And a lot of times it's not like, oh, here's a one chord and it's E flat, like I definitely am doing like, okay, here's the E flat. And then we're going to go to A flat minor, and then we're going to go to this random G, and then there's going to be a something 7. And that's definitely something that I need for my own practice, because I'm like having to sing these fast German words on top. So I just know that these are the chords I can play underneath me, rather than like trying to play all of the Strauss vocal line. You know what I mean? It's those sorts of experiences, but that's also comes with more keyboard skill too. There's a few really amazing singers out there. I don't know if you all have ever encountered a soprano named Erin Morley. She's got some YouTubes out on social media where she accompanies herself while singing, Sophie and Der Rosenkavalier by Strauss, playing Strauss perfectly and then singing perfectly. And I'm like, what is your brain doing at this? Like, how does your brain even move? I'm good with maybe these two fingers, one on each hand. And if I can like find them, I'm like, yeah, all right. You know, like I think I am the best pianist ever. But like Erin Morley, look her up. She's amazing. She's also like one of the best sopranos in the world. And I'm just in awe of people who can like make beauty on the machine and perform with it too. And a lot of that is taking the brain and being like, is making sure that you have like your brain on two different things at one time. And she's really good at that.
Yeah, the brain on two different things. You know, so much of what we're doing is like this is mental, and it's being able to prioritize, right? From it's like sight singing, where you're not having to think about what the solfege is and the pitch and the rhythm, or, you know, dictation, where you're like having to think about chunking, and, you know, you can't have to think of everything, so you have to break things into it. And even, I mean, I'm thinking about, you know, my music ed students. They have to be able to sing and play while they're also managing students. I got music therapy students. They have to be able to sing and play while they are working with a hospice patient, you know, yeah. or dealing with these, you know, medical professionals. And I think that's something that students don't realize, is that the skills that they're learning have to become so internalized that they don't have to think about them. It doesn't have to be, right. That's not the hard part. The hard part is, you know, you have to then act and do all this stuff on stage. You're not having to think, well, how to pronounce that German word, or what? I mean, there's all these other things. And that I think students don't really realize that, well, if they get this bare minimum ability, that's enough. But in the real world, that has to be second nature, right?
Right. I think what's in this class yesterday, there were collaborative pianists who were talking to other collaborative pianists, and they were saying, well, the bass line is just being good at piano. That's just the bass line. And I was kind of like, oof, that's hard to tell a singer. Like, you just have to be a good singer. You know, you have to have your technique together. You just have to like, and that's a very hard thing to just tell people. You're constantly working on your technique. You're constantly going to be changing things. Your body's going to be changing. Your voice is changing. So with that, the theory, like learning about how to be a good sight reader, how to be a good, make sure to be able to read notes from the page, make sure to be a good musician. Those are kind of like the base. And then, like you're saying, you have to have the rest of the things on top of that, because you are constantly in two modes. You're following conductor while you're acting and trying to be in the moment on stage, and you're dealing with languages, and you're dealing with a costume, and there's a whole lot more. I can only imagine, same thing with music education students. They're dealing with so many levels of things all at once. I think sometimes the communication skills are like the one thing you just have to work right toward, and then you're missing then you're forgetting about like, oh, I forgot what this chord was when I was playing this song, and it's a very interesting thing to realize that we're all multitasking so much.
Yeah, I think one of the ways that I've grown as a teacher across the years is that I used to try to help my students focus on one thing, especially in aural skills. And now I intentionally force them to do more than one thing at a time, like to count, one line with they'll speak a rhythm with their mouth, but also clap a different one with their hands. Or I do something called Eyes Ahead, where I'll put melodies on the board in PowerPoint, but they're never looking at the measure that they're singing. Or I'll do echo singing, where I'm singing the next line while they're singing back the line that I just sang to me. And they're also having to figure out the solfege, because I don't give it to them. I just sing like loo, 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 So things like that. If I let them practice for something, I tell them they should all practice out loud, and no one's allowed to leave the room. So if we're doing duets or something like that, then everyone is practicing the duet at the same time, with other duets going at the same time in other keys and things like that. And they often are like, oh, this is the worst. Why can't we just go out in the hall? And I'm like, Do you know how many times in my career as a musician, I have had to focus on what I'm going to do for an audition or for a performance or for whatever, with all sorts of craziness going on around me? It's a skill you have to build. It's something you have to be able to do. So I think that's something we've never really talked about before, but I think that's a really good and important skill. And there are ways to help students develop it, especially in aural skills.
Right. And really, like, I used to think that being a good musician, being good at music theory, being good at sight reading was a very natural thing. And just like being a good performer, being a good singer, especially, it is all about how much work you're putting into it. And really, it takes an immense amount of time. And some people, it takes way longer than others. And it's just a matter of like how you're efficiently using those skills, and how you're also like changing up the things that you're doing in order to make the skill honed even more. It's quite a process. I don't think myself as somebody who is great at new music, but somehow I've been a part of these new operas and I'm like, oh, okay, I can do this. And I think a lot of it is I know how to prepare beforehand, and then I know how to really ask for help. Also, like there's sometimes when you have to go to a coach and you're just like, all right, let me show you what I've done and tell me if this is something that helps, that will help in the long run. And sometimes you also have to go to the conductor and just say, I need this cue and I need this, like, I'm going to need to hear this in the orchestra. Is that going to be something that I can get, or what, these are all things that I never, growing up, quote unquote, growing up, I never thought that was like necessary, but it really is. You have to ask for help. And a lot of times it's just so that you can be better for the next time.
Yeah. That collaborative aspect. I mean, that's one thing I'm hearing as you're speaking, is just like your ability to collaborate and work with others is critical, to your success. In your undergraduate experience, or in your graduate experience, did you seek those types of collaborative experiences as well? Or is that something that you kind of had to learn once you got out there? Like, okay, I need to make money. How do I do this? I need to collaborate.
Yeah. I mean, when you're a singer, you'd never do anything a cappella, it would be weird. So everything is an art song recital, and you have to do all of your performances with somebody else. And it makes that bond between you and your collaborative pianist is a huge deal. There's a lot of trust and a lot of respect needs to happen. Respect for time and respect for each other's abilities, that's the thing. You have to go in with all the ideas, and then also be able to take all the ideas, and then you make something that's really fun. And like I said, I am amazed when I watch pianists sit down at the machine and are just like incredible at it. I think it's magical. And then a lot of pianists have no idea how we make the noises that we make, because we have different things that we are good at. And that's what's kind of awesome. The like technical side of it is that you have to realize how to be a good communicator. You have to realize how to have those expectations for each other. And that's maybe sometimes where people kind of fall short, where it's really difficult. If you're not able to communicate your need for, I would love this to go faster because I can't make it, I don't have enough breath, or I would love to like slow this down because I know this would be so much more, so much easier. Or sometimes you've heard something and you see a pianist and they're using the pedal a lot. You know what I mean? Like, maybe can we try it super dry? Let's try that, and I want all of that from my pianists too. I love to take things and be like, let me try this color out. Let's try this vowel a little different and see what happens. I think that experience is what is really fun about making music, is that you can play together. And then with opera, it's like a whole new level, because you have like 8 singers on the stage sometimes, and you're just all playing, and you're trying to you take in all this stuff that you've worked on, and then you're trying to have fun with each other, which is really great.
Now, I think we're about 40 minutes in, so it's my time to make my confession that opera is probably one of my, how do I say it? I don't know very much about
Don't
it,
stay at
and
home.
I've had a love-hate relationship with it. I'm going to just be honest. I'm just going to be honest.
Please, yeah.
All right.
I got it. I get it.
You know, I've left I've left an opera after the second act because we had to get home, just because like we know that she dies at the end and we had to get
It's
home
4
to
hours
watch
long.
our kids. I know. And then we have to drive.
Yeah.
And so but I think
Yeah.
one of the challenges, and I mean, I grew up as a pianist. And I think one of the things is that, especially as a theory teacher, is there's not a lot of opera lit out there in our theory textbooks.
Right.
And so could you maybe give us some ideas on maybe some opera, like not maybe operas, and maybe even like pieces that you're like, this would be a great thing to put into a theory class just to kind of expose, students to the genre, because unfortunately so much of our lit is piano music, maybe chamber music, an art song will have, Schubert or Schumann in there. But very rarely do we have much in the way of opera, unless it's maybe like something from Handel or maybe a Mozart aria, but that's basically it.
Right. Yeah. So let me tell you a story. I felt really, really smart. I was in Valencia, Spain, and I was walking down, and there was this garage door that was painted, and it had 2 staves, and it had 4 notes on it. It was a chord, and they say, if you know this, you went to school to. Oh, I wish I knew. I'm gonna mess up the quote, but it was like, you went to school too long if you know this. And I was like, that's the Tristan chord. What? Number one, I felt
A plus. Yes.
Okay. So for my picture, I'm going to send that picture to you, because it's literally, I'm like, oh my gosh, this makes me the nerdiest thing, because that thing is making fun of people like us who are like super, like we study this stuff and we're like, oh my gosh, what is this? Well, number one, the Tristan chord is always really fun. And I was in Tristan and Isolde at the Lyric Opera of Chicago it was like my second year, I guess, in the program. And I was like the sailor, right? And okay, this is another like name droppy story. Deborah Voigt was like downstage and singing, and then Greg Grimsley and I had to like climb this thing. And I was done because the sailor only sings like the very beginning, all a cappella, by the way. So I need everybody who's listening to this podcast, if you're still listening, to listen to the beginning, obviously the overture of Tristan, and then go to the next one, which is...
We all stop, actually. We only listen to the overture, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
At least the theorists do. They listen to the overture, get the Tristan chord, but then you're right after that.
That is too bad, because the Sailor song is really good. It's about 45 seconds. It's not much, right? Like 6 phrases, whatever, but it's all a cappella. And I gave myself panic attacks about this thing, because I was like, I'm not going to be in tune when this orchestra comes right back in with and plays the chord right after me, right? And I'm like, I'm gonna mess up the entire show, and it's just started, and I did it right every time. I felt like such an accomplished singer at that point. And there's a recording out there somewhere, and now I need to find that. But anyway, I don't know why I started that. I was trying to talk myself up. Tristan chord, really fun, but listen to the whole thing and just be like, look how difficult this would be if you had to sing this 45-second solo totally in silence after that amazing overture, and then have to like start off the show before everybody starts this story. So there was that. And then I also, the set for this show was that I couldn't leave the stage until the end of the first act, which is an hour, 20 minutes, something like that. So I like had to take magazines and I like stuffed them underneath the stage, and I'd like hid under there on the stage of Lyric Opera Chicago for like an hour and 20. I was just like, this was before you obviously couldn't take your phone out there. And so I would just read. It was so embarrassing. Okay. So the Tristan chord, that's really fun. I really like as far as like form is concerned, I think that like Mozart operas are the most amazing things ever. The best music theater for their time, and that the fact that they've lasted this long, I think like some of the recitatives into arias of both Così fan tutte, which is going to happen in Dallas Opera in the spring, but Nozze di Figaro, the Marriage of Figaro, definitely like I già vinta la causa. I think that's, I mean, just looking at the form and maybe some of the chord structure, but I don't like know anything else. But those are some of my favorite things, and thinking like, how did Mozart come up with this? It's amazing.
I think one of the neat things about looking at those Mozart arias is how he uses the harmonies and certain melody notes to express the lyrics, that express that text. And I think that's another cool thing that we sometimes miss. We've talked about this with analyzing Bach chorales. When we take the lyrics out of something, we miss so much of what the composer is actually trying to do. And I think in operas and those things, I think that's a way we can get in and help those students get excited about it, because what they're doing musically to express that text is so interesting and so cool.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what it is. The music theory of it comes from when the words and the music sound exactly like what you have in your head. And then obviously, you know, we've had these old productions that we have seen for many, many years, and you're realizing like the genius of somebody inventing these things before you could see this action happening on stage. And that's exactly the way it's supposed to look, the way it sounds, you know? Yeah, it's magical. It's really, that's a stupid word, but it's kind of magical. And I totally understand the, you know, only wanting to go to 2/3 of an opera, because operas are long. But if you were like, okay, an opera ticket I can get for like, you know, if you want a real fancy one, that's different. But if you just want a normal ticket, you're going to go for like $40, right? Like you're going to have a full evening of entertainment, and you can really like kind of milk that, because you're also getting theater, you're getting music, you're getting dancing, you're getting big ensembles, you're getting very intimate scenes. There's so much happening with opera. And I guess that's why you need 4 and 5 hours for it sometimes.
Yeah, it's a great point. I would not consider myself an opera expert whatsoever, but I did present on an opera at the Society for Music Theory, Fidelio. So if anyone wants to check out my Fidelio stuff that's listening, I will share, and I'll give a shameless plug. But I'm not an expert, and we decided to trim it down and really only talk about three arias. But I love Don Pizarro as a character there. Oh my goodness. There's so much there in that aria. I know it's not a tenor aria,
no.
So you probably haven't done it, but
I
showed a little bit of bits and pieces of that, even just for like, you know, an augmented second interval paired with like this villainous character, you know, that's like about social injustice. I mean, it's relevant. And I think that would be a cool thing to share too. You know, I'm kind of interjecting and answering Paul's question too. But I think that one's a cool one. And I don't think a lot of people play that one that often. So I think it deserves a little bit more emphasis. Personally.
It's really Beethoven's only opera. And it's getting done. I mean, obviously the anniversary, I think, was last year, or maybe it was 1920. And it's getting done so much more, because it's about like the human condition, basically. And it's like one of the first operas that showed this heroine character who dressed up like a man to save her love, who's a man who was in jail. And like, it was groundbreaking, because you were talking about a woman who was going to save humanity. And eventually, like, you know, you had to get Don Pizarro, the mean guy, out of the way before you could get like the resolve of everybody, and like the hope that happens at the end. The final chorus and scene is so stunning. I was in that, excuse me as I drop this name, I was in that at the at the Met, and it's on iTunes if you want to tune into that. But I was playing Iachino, who is the police guard who's kind of under Don Pizarro, you know, and he basically is being told like, he's in love with Marcellina, who's in love with Fidelio, but Fidelio's really Leonora, a woman. So then that's also weird. It's and there's a quartet. Ist so wunderbar. Do you do that? It's a fugue style, and it is exquisite music. It's one of the best.
I think Fidelio is not done or wasn't done that often because Beethoven is just freaking hard to sing. Like I just did Beethoven 9, and the guy rehearsing us was like, in my experience, choirs love to perform Beethoven 9, but they hate to rehearse it. And that is spot on correct. It is so hard. I mean, you would come home and just be like, I feel like I went to the gym. Like it is such a workout to sing Beethoven.
It's so high and it just lasts forever. The end of the ninth has, excuse me, I don't know what kind of chord it is. A big C chord, I'm assuming. For literally 5 minutes. It's the same chord. And I'm just like, okay, are you done? Okay, are you done? It's not done.
It just goes on and on and on. And you're always at the limits of your range and you're just living there and hanging out there. Like, it's not you go there for a second and then come back. No, you just hang out there at the limits of your range. And if you are moving around, it's all fast and ridiculous. But it's amazing music, and it's really fun to sing. And audiences love it. I think especially coming out of COVID, like this was one of the first ones that we've done where the hall was almost full. And because we were tested and vaccinated and all those things, we were able to sing without masks. And the audience response was incredible to that piece. And I think, some of it is just that it stretches you to your limits. It's like they can feel that in the audience as well.
Yeah. And really, I think, again, the good ones set the text really well too. So then when, you're talking about Freude and joy over and you keep hearing these sopranos be like, Fra! Like the entire time, you're like, oh, this is really joyful, even though they're kind of, in pain a little bit sometimes. It is like Beethoven is a lesson in perseverance. Like I think for singers, it's just about like being about stamina, but still there's such like beauty within it that people are touched by it because it's the best mix of music and text together.
Yeah, that piece has become like the anthem of the world. It's just kind of look back at like how often it's been used for so many different things. Is that final Ode to Joy chorus? And I mean, there is something powerful when you have, and the same thing with opera, right? When you have this massive array of instruments, you have these singers just yelling, like singing their hearts out, right? It's awe-inspiring, right? When you see that, and then there's a chorus there, and then the spectacle about it, it really is. I mean, it's amazing, and it is kind of life-affirming, when you see all of that together in person. It's not on a screen. It's like you're literally in the same room, experiencing with everyone, and you're not mic'd, right? And so, I mean, right. it's really amazing.
Yeah,
I'm warming up to opera.
Good. Maybe Così fan tutte in the spring.
Yeah, I'm definitely game for it. And
good.
Absolutely.
Do you want to hear a warm, sexy tenor?
I can't wait. I cannot wait.
Oh, geez, I cannot. My mom sent me a picture of that of the pamphlet, and I was like, I obviously don't read it, but it's actually going to be a really great cast, and that production is really charming, and it makes the story go by fast. It's nice. Yeah. And like I said, that opera has some of the most amazing musical moments. I love performing in it. And I think a lot of times the audience has to be really patient because our 2022, attention spans are very different from, 18th century opera goers who got to go eat meals in the middle of the opera. Don't we wish those days were back?
Oh my gosh.
I think I think the first time I saw Marriage of Figaro uncut, where they did the entire thing, I got home at like 2 a.m. It is
Yep.
just so long. It's like 4.5 hours long.
Yep.
It is truly very long, but it was fun. It was worth it.
The first thing I saw at the Met was Marriage of Figaro, and I stood in standing room for 4 acts. I never sat down. It was full. It was amazing.
That's a true test of stamina right there.
Right there. There you go. Beethoven and Mozart standing room.
The first thing I saw at the Met was you and Barbara of Seville.
Really?
Yeah, that's the first time I'd ever been there. It was very cool.
Yeah.
So
was that the performance when I kicked the pillow into the pit? Because that happened.
I don't remember. I don't remember you doing that, so probably not, but
oh my gosh. Yeah. Every day I was like, I'm never going to get hired back.
Where did it land?
It landed in the seat where the guitarist was, and the guitarist had already gone. So like literally it landed like boop.
So that worked out.
It worked out fine. I was really terrified, and I was like, yeah, Peter Gelp is going to call me and I'm going to get fired, and that'll be it. But everything was fine. I went back.
I'm sure you're not the first person to accidentally kick something in.
Something fell in. Yeah. Oof.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, I definitely, there's like that extra pressure of being there. Were you there for opening night? Like the first one, I think?
No, maybe.
Anyway,
or closing. No, I think it was closing.
Was it? Okay. So yeah, I mean, it was a magical experience because I knew everybody. I'd have worked with everybody in the cast before, which never happens. And going to a gig, being a freelance performer is like, it's just managing expectations, like, okay, I don't know who this soprano is, but we're going to have to like get to know each other real quick because we're going to have to make out 3 times and we're going to, like sing these long high notes forever. But that cast was awesome because everybody was really funny and really fun, and I knew them all. And so like, I couldn't have asked for a better situation. And then I kicked the pill in the pit.
Oh, this has been such a treat, David, to get to chat with you and get to hear your thoughts and share your experiences with us. And so, but we have to let you go because we know that you're a freelancer, and so time is money. And so, hey,
I have 1 hour for lunch, and I got to go back to a class about collaborative piano.
But before we let you go, we like to kind of ask just some rapid fire questions, just real short, hot takes.
Are there points?
Number. There can be. Yeah, we can have a point system if you'd like. And so, Ben, do you have a 300 point question for Jenn?
I have a question. I don't know if it's 300 points, and it's not even related to music theory, but I'm just curious, what is the craziest thing you've ever had to do in an opera on stage?
Oh my God. Okay. Craziest. I definitely just finished this performance, this production of A Midsummer Night's Dream. It's by Benjamin Britten, and it was a production by Laurent Pelly, and he had done the play before in French, and he had never done the opera. And opera, you have like, you start singing here and you end here, and that's what happens. But in a play, you can take your time with the text and you can do all the stuff. So this whole production was basically like, what's going to happen? I was one of the 4 lovers. There's 4 lovers in the play, and I had to run on stage with a rolling bed and then jump on the bed and sing my first line. And the soprano was going to catch the bed, and while it was rolling toward her, right downstage, and then roll me back. And I almost died like 4 times. No big deal. It's fine. Everybody's okay. But definitely it was like a fun, like, oh, this is a skateboard experience. let's try this out a couple of times this way. And let's try, let me aim directly downstage and see what happens. Let me aim stage right a little more. I had such a friggin' blast. But at the time I definitely was like, yeah, I'm gonna roll off the stage anytime here. That's not a very good one. I'm gonna think of another one, and I'll probably call you and tell you a better one, Jen.
I mean, that's a pretty good one. I think that would be pretty amazing to watch that happen in real life. So,
That's
All right,
worth at least 200 points.
Yeah, I think so. I think that is, that's 250 right there.
Excellent.
All right. Okay. So my question for 400 points is, since you're at an art song conference, what is one art song or song cycle that you think should be taught in theory classes?
Very good. Definitely Beethoven. Talking about Beethoven again, Beethoven's An die ferne Geliebte. It is the quote unquote first art song cycle, because nobody really did multiple songs that were written together. Multiple poems that were written together. It's a tricky one because it is 6 pieces all put together, and they are linked. They actually go from one to another, which is another thing that doesn't really happen. Not really. There's not really a Schubert one. There's not really any Schumann that does that. But An die ferne Geliebte, really great. And there's some really magical moments. Again, some of them linked really well with the text. The text, however, is a little bizarre. It's a little difficult. It's a little non-dramatic. And so that's another layer of difficulty for the performer. But I think for the audience, they really get into it because it's all love songs. And it's basically about love for about 12 minutes. So it's also attainable.
Short's also good. That's great. That's great. Right. 500 points for that one.
Oh. Am I going to make it 1,000, Ben?
Yes, I think you are. Yes. This is an open-ended question, so I think it's a softball for 1,000, we'll say.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Here's mine. A really talented opera singer comes into my office. They're struggling with music theory. What do you tell them? What's your best advice?
Okay, so yesterday I just heard this bit of advice, and it's kind of like, if you know how people who really love baseball are the people who play it, right? So I would think that it might not be the same thing, but if you really want to know more about theory, about analyzing the music, you have to kind of make the music. So I would say start composing some things, you know what I mean? Like seeing if a singer is interested in composing and at least writing down lines, say, pick a pop song that you really like, even, you know what I mean? Or pick an aria and listen to it only, and then that's your notation. Or find some sort of music that you actually want to notate, because that's the kind of thing that will connect you directly to the activity. I don't know if that makes sense.
I think it does.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
Find the inspiration, find what gives you the energy to overcome the hurdles, because it's only just a process to getting towards that understanding. And that's what theory should be. I think a lot of us would agree with that. It's it's a gateway to understanding different music. But sometimes it becomes more of a blockade than anything else, and we don't want that to be the case.
And a lot of times, theory, that blockade is just it's one part of the learning experience. And like I said, I think the best musicians are the ones who are the most curious, are the ones who are always learning new music and always figuring things out, new things out. And that's kind of as far as when I was young, I kind of thought once you know stuff, you just know stuff, and then you just do it, And I know nothing. I know what I've done, and so I can use that, but I don't really know anything, I tell people, if I didn't do what I do, I have no real skills. And I have to I think a lot of it is feeling like you're bumbling around a little bit, but with music theory, it just seems you all seem like delightful people, but a lot of times theory professors are daunting, because they're smart and they know the music and they know, they know what they're doing. And you have to mess up a whole lot. And some people don't like messing up, especially musicians who are type A like me. Performers and singers,
Yeah. I love that. I love that advice just to be curious, because so many students are afraid to be curious, to put themselves out there. And then the fact that, you never once you leave the kiddie pool, you just keep going into the deep end and you never get out of it. Right. And
Yep.
I think that's really helpful for folks to hear, professionals who are doing it, that are living the dream, quote unquote, that being like, I'm still learning. I don't know a lot of stuff. I feel less confident about what I know now than what I did 10 years ago. And I mean, that's a growing musician. And that's kind of what it takes, right? Not this like uber confidence, just this openness to new ideas.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
12,000 points. I think that last one, clearly knocked it out of the park.
Oh, yeah.
This has been such a pleasure. Oh
yeah. And so just as we close out, maybe just people have been listening to your warm, sexy tenor this past hour. Let our listeners know where people can find you online, and maybe what you have coming up next.
Yeah. So my website, which is, she's not fancy. My website is davidportillotenor.com. Please take a look. The schedule on there is updated. So I go this summer to the Bard Festival and sing Strauss's Die Schweigsame Frau for the Summerscape Festival. That'll be the performances. Rehearsals start in June and performances will be at the end of July. And then the fall is really right now all concert work, which I'm super excited about. Two of them in particular, Handel's Jephthah with the music of the Baroque in Chicago, Illinois. Really great orchestra. And then another really great orchestra, the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra in St. Paul, Minnesota, is performing the Serenade for Tenor, String, and Horns. And I'm the soloist for that. And that's a lifelong piece of music that I wanted to sing, and I'm so excited about that one. And then the spring is all opera. So in Christmas time, I'm back at the Met with the Magic Flute family performances in English, and it's a short one. Paul, this is for you. If you want to go to a short one, that's at the Met in the New Year and Christmas time. And then we have Austin Opera's The Pearl Fishers and Cosi fan tutte in Dallas Opera. So there's two Texas shows, which I'm crazy excited about. And I also have Minnesota Opera. I'm singing La Fille du Régiment, the Daughter of the Regiment, which has the Crazy High Seas aria. And I'm totally not nervous about that. That is very ironical because I am very nervous about it, actually.
So that's our show. Thank you so much for listening to Note Doctors, the Music Theory and Pedagogy podcast. We will be back with more interviews with professors and teachers who will be dropping all sorts of theory knowledge for your education, edification, and enjoyment. So until then, bye-bye.